Today is Tuesday, May 27th, 2025. This is Sarah Franklin interviewing Jerry Givner for the Theodore Corbett Institute for Running History Research's Roadrunners Club New York Association Oral History Project. Jerry, thanks for taking some time to speak with me today. To start,
You're welcome.
could you introduce yourself and just provide some biographical information, like your birth date, birthplace, and a bit about yourself as a youngster?
Yes, I was born December 1st, 1944. I went to East New York Vocational Technical High School called New York Transit. I was very fortunate to have a great high school coach named Mr. Henry Junk, who coached a lot of good runners. In high school, I ran 440 mile. I won the Brooklyn champs. Came in fifth in the city champs. Indoors, I ran 440 for the mile and 10:12 for the 2 mile. Every other weekend, we go up to McCoon's Dam Park in the Bronx or Van Cortlandt Park, and we'd run our guts out anywhere from 3 miles to 10 miles. And we did that for a number of years, and I guess people are still doing it. So I had the privilege of working out with a few good runners, like George Wisniewski ran a 4:01 mile eventually for NYU, and Byron Dice ran a 3:56 mile for AA track club, and he did a 1:55, 1:45 for the half. So I ran 5 10-mile runs with them down the Bell Parkway in the 1960s. I won the Air Force 2-mile race walking championship. Because I ran a lot of distance, I met George Wisniewski. He said, "What the heck you doing here at the Olympic tryout?" And he and Byron were trying out for it. I ran a bunch of marathons in about 4 hours. And last one was like 4 hours, 20 minutes at the Long Island Marathon, because it's near where I live and it's easy to get to. I did my first marathon in Yonkers in 1964. So that was a pretty tough one. It was 90 degrees. I won a few races because it was over 90 degrees and all the good runners dropped out. And I liked the heat. And I'm over 80 and I'm still running. I have a few stents that slowed me down. And I'm running 3 to 5 miles a day, 18, 20 minutes a mile, hopefully break 10 minutes for the mile in the future. What else would you like to know?
That's incredible. Yeah,
I've been running. Yeah, I've been running since 1958, almost nonstop.
So what got you started in running? Was that when you were in high school, or did you start running before then?
I always enjoyed running. And my high school I went to had a track team. So I figured, let me give it a try. And I really enjoyed running an hour or two a day. And I still enjoy running an hour or two a day. I just enjoy running. Now what got me started.
So you competed for the St. Anthony Boys Club. Could you talk a bit about the team, where it was based, what type of athletes it attracted, and why you opted to compete with that club?
And the coach was a guy named Pataky, who had a big house by Aqueduct. So every Sunday we'd run 5, 10 miles on the Bell Parkway, either to Flatbush Avenue or Springfield Boulevard, depending on the weather. The best runner was a guy named Jim O'Connell. He won the New York City cross country championships. He did 25 something for 5 miles. He used to run 100 miles a week. So he was a very good distance runner. And I guess he was the best runner on the team. There were like 20, 30 guys that would show up in Milton Pataky's basement. We'd change, have tea, and we'd all run and have a good time. I did that for a few years until 1964. I went in the Air Force, and I saw notice that they had the. I went to Chicago to run in some races. I got injured, so a guy said, "Why don't I race walk?" So the first time I tried race walking, I did a 7-minute mile because I ran about 80 miles a week, and that got me. I won the Air Force 2-mile championship in 14 minutes. So that qualified me for the Olympic tryouts, which was fun. I saw California for 6 months. And then when I got out of the Air Force, I went back to college, and then I worked as a medic in the Army from 1976 to 1992. So I ran the Salt Lake Desert News Marathon in Utah through the desert. Was fun. I ran Frankfurt, Germany. I ran Hiroshima, Japan, all about 4 hours. So I just like running 2 hours a day. And I didn't read anything about the science of running. Like a lot of guys, we just ran our guts out every day, not worrying about hydration or carbs. So now I'm starting to read up a little on it since I'm over 80 and I want to keep going.
Yeah, the game has definitely changed with everything with nutrition and hydration and of course super shoes and everything like that. It's a whole different world out there.
Yeah, but they're not running faster. I had the privilege of running with Court Chinoy and El Rouge. And in 1998, El Rouge ran 3:43 for the mile, and it's still the world record. And his friend Court Chinoy did 2 hours, 5 minutes in the Chicago Marathon. So that would still win a lot of races. In the mile, he would win every mile, obviously, with that time in 1998. So with all this high-tech tracks and high-tech shoes, nobody broke, El Rouge's record. So I was very fortunate to sum up, the way they trained is they ran 30, 40 quarters on the track, about 60 seconds with a flying jog. So after the 60-second quarter, they would slow down, which was my all out, and then 110 yards, and they run another quarter. I saw them run 30, 40 quarters in Forest Park and Queens. Or they'd run 2 miles sprinting up all the hills in Forest Park. So I was very lucky to meet them a few times. They're very, very nice guys. And he still holds the record because he did a lot of quarters under 60 nonstop. Now that's, I guess, the hardest workout you could do.
Especially that many times over.
What?
Especially that many times over when you're doing it 40 times. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, that's why he did 3:43 for the mile, in my opinion. Also, Rockefeller gave him a house upstate because Congress wouldn't make him a citizen, Court Chinoy, because he held the world record for the marathon. I guess that's the way stupid runners are. They know he would win. There's no American at that time that would touch 2:05.
And still not today, really.
Yeah, they used to train in Rockefeller Estates. He gave them permission to run on Rockefeller Estates in a house anytime they needed it. That's Governor Rockefeller from Virginia, not Nelson Rockefeller, the governor from New York. So he heard about his ordeal of becoming a U.S. citizen. So, most track runners have it hard, unfortunately. So you got to make the best you can. But that when Nick's running, going through adversity and doing the best you can, I think.
So you
got any other questions about anything?
Well, so you mentioned El Guru and Khalid Kanuchi. You were running with them when they were doing these workouts in Forest Park?
I was jogging around the track. I couldn't do one under 60.
Oh, you were okay. So you were there. Yeah, gotcha.
I was just jogging, working out. And they used to train in Central Park and other places. And sometimes they would go to Forest Park because not that many people know it has a 2-mile circumference dense forest with soft dirt that horses ride on. That's great for running, and it has steep hills. So a lot of great runners would run in an hour or two there to warm up, and then they had an all-weather lousy track to run on. One of the best coaches in the world is 92, in my opinion. His name is Wito. He ran in the 56 Olympics for Poland. He did a 4-minute mile for Poland, and he's still the coach there. People come, including Kanochinoi, ask him for advice or whatever. And he's 92. He always wins the Fifth Avenue Mile. And he's a very nice guy. He's a great guy. He got 20, 30 people come with all calibers, and they run around the forest for an hour or two, and then they do quarters or halves on the track. And that's very enjoying. He's still alive, and he's still 92, and he's still running. So there's some longevity to runners. The more you run, maybe the longer you live.
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah.
Were you living in Queens at the time when you were doing all this running in Forest Park?
Yeah. I lived in East New York, Brooklyn, then I moved to Howard Beach. Now half the time I live in Lake Ronkonkoma, Long Island, and half the time in Howard Beach, which is 3 miles from Forest Park.
And what kind of workouts were you doing in the park? Were you on the track? Were you running those dirt trails on the hills?
I run 5-10 miles, my guts out, and that's it. That's what, I never really did. Every time I tried to do speed work, I always got injured. So I took a hint, and that's why I never broke 60 for the quarter. So even for a marathon, you can't run a good marathon if you can't break 60 for the quarter. If you listen to the good marathon runners on the news, they said you got to break 50 for the quarter. You got to break a 4-minute mile if you want to run a good marathon, because they average 4:30 a mile to do 2 hours and change.
Mm-hmm.
So, speed is obviously important.
So when you were running all these miles, these 5-10 mile, pretty arduous training runs, it seems like, given the terrain, and also it seems like you were keeping a pretty good pace. What distances were you training to race at the time?
I won a Northeastern 10-mile championship, 90-some degrees around Van Cortlandt Park track. I did it in 1 hour. I did 6-minute miles for 1 hour, 92 degrees. Peter McArdle, McCluskey, and other great runners were there, would have bet me, but they dropped out of Canada heat. And that was my strong point. I like running in the heat. So that was my biggest race that I won was the Northeastern 10-miler with Peter McArdle and other runners there. But they were going for a time. And then when they realized it was too hot, they couldn't make the time with the hang for, so they dropped out. I just ran because that's what runners do. I wasn't going for no time. But I could do 6-minute miles for 10 miles. I guess that's the best I did.
Well, especially in 90-degree heat.
Yeah, with 90-degree heat on a blacktop track of Van Cortlandt Park. So that even made it hotter. So all the good runners dropped out. So I got to meet Peter McArdle a number of times because I used to go Van Cortlandt Park to run. He was too humble, too nice of a guy to be a great runner. And why? Did you know about Peter McArdle?
Yes, from Ireland.
Yeah. He worked for Fifth Avenue Bus Company as a mechanic, and he had a hard life. People don't know what other people go through. Some people are lucky, and some people aren't. But when you run, that's the way it goes. It doesn't matter whether you're poor or rich. Like Baby Bakila won 60 marathon with no shoes, so that's the way it is. I'm very lucky to meet some very good runners in all the time I was running.
I came across a New York Times article about that race you just mentioned, that 10 miler in Van Cortlandt Park, and it said that only 8 of the 27 entrants started the race just because of the heat. And it also says that Dr. George Sheehan, who was at the time 45 years old and a father of 12, had finished fifth that day.
Yeah, that was my best race of my life because I would run 5-10 miles a day for years and years. So sometimes you have a great day and sometimes not. So I was just lucky that day.
Were you aware of Dr. Sheehan at that time?
Not really. I wasn't aware of almost any runner. We were just trying our guts out and hardly don't talk. I know he was a cardiologist and a great runner, and he wrote a few books after the fact. I had a few great friends that live in New Jersey that used to run with him, but that's all ancient history, I guess. That's just ancient history.
Did you yourself have any racing rivals over the years, friendly or not?
No, not really. I just ran, and what happened happened. I just ran like most runners. We just run our guts out, and what happens happens. I didn't look at rivalry or whatever. Most of us runners that's what we did every other weekend. We run our guts out till we dropped it and kept on going every other week. Every time there was a race in Yonkers or Van Cortlandt, wherever it was, we try to get to and just run it with knowing next to nothing. Some guys knew, to do quarters under 60 or whatever, to speed up a little. But a lot of guys like myself, we just ran 5-10 miles every day, dragging along, and that's what I still try to do.
So it sounds like when you were in New York, you were running, 60 plus miles a week. When you were a medic in the Army, were you able to keep up that training regimen? It sounds like, did you travel in your job as a medic? And if you did, were you able to keep that up?
I didn't get 1 minute off. When 64, 68, I was in the Air Force as a cook, and I didn't get 1 minute to train. And in the Army, I didn't get 1 minute to train. I had to work all the time. Some people like Tom Courtney, runs in. Tom Courtney came in third in the Olympic Games in 68 and a half mile. He got, 2 years to run. He went to the best tracks and whatever. And other people had to work, got no time off. But that's maybe lucky or whatever. But that's, Byron Dice had to study very hard to get a master's degree in calculus. So he had to study all the time. He didn't have the luxury of jogging 10-mile days. So all Byron Dice did is run 10-20, 220s, each one under 30 seconds. And that got him to where he got him because he was lacking time. And other people have a lot of time, so they could, have work out twice a day, have nice places or whatever. But that's what life is. We all have challenges and got to make the best of it. He made the best of it. He did a 3:55 miles. He was very competitive in the half mile, as you know.
Yeah, and 2 Olympic Games, of course.
Yeah. I ran with him a lot at Forest Park, and I tried to get him to do 5-10 miles down the Bell Parkway, but he didn't really like it. George Wisniewski liked it better, but in cross country, Wisniewski would beat Dice in cross country, but they both broke 26 minutes. And Joe O'Connell, who ran 100 miles a week, bet them both. He did 24 minutes because he ran 100 miles a week, but he was kind of slow. The further you run, the less speed matters, I guess. So it was really a great experience running with those guys. Too bad none of them live in New York City. And, that's the way it is. They moved to Florida or other places, and, that's the way it is.
Were you friends with Dice and Wisniewski? Were you friends with them outside of running, or would you just meet up for runs and that was it?
Yeah. No, after the last time I saw him was at the '68 Olympic tryouts in the LA Coliseum. George Wisniewski said, "What the hell are you doing here, Jerry?" And I said, "I'm doing the walk." And then he said his best mile is 4:01. So I told him, "Why don't you go a little faster?" And then he laughed. And that was the last time I seen both of them. And that at the LA Coliseum in '68. I know he became a history teacher. And that was the last I seen of them, is 1968. But if they're in New York, I would love to meet them anywhere in New York. If they ever get to New York.
Were you privy to the founding of the New York Roadrunners in the 1970?
Yeah,
Were you
yeah,
Joe Kleinerman, Kurt Steiner, those guys? Do you have any stories about them?
Yeah. Every weekend in a race, Kleinerman and Kurt Steiner would be there with their stopwatches, organizing the event and running the event. They were both very dedicated people. Kleinerman and Steiner were I used to see him, talk to them all the time. They were great people.
Was that up in Cherry, like the Cherry Tree Marathons and up in McCombs Dam Park, or was that just all over the city?
Yeah. McCombs Dam Park, every other week they had a race starting by Yankee Stadium, up McCombs Dam Park, down Fordham Road, and circled around like a firehouse there around Yankee Stadium. Once a month, St. Anthony's Boys Club, the New York AC, and other teams would race there. So we just run our guts out there on the pavement. I remember that for years and years. We just came and run our guts out, and that was it. And the way it went is the way it went.
Did you have a favorite place to run or race in the city? It sounds like you put a fair share of miles in at McCombs Dam Park, and all over Queens, Van Cortlandt. Yeah, was there a favorite place that you like to run or train?
Yeah, Van Cortlandt was beautiful because you go through the woods and through the hills. Van Cortlandt Park has to be the #1 place to train.
Did you ever run any cross country races up there?
Yeah.
I guess good for training, not so much for racing.
Yeah. Most of all the cross country races in New York City are held in Van Cortlandt Park. And then in '62, they changed the Brooklyn Champs to Prospect Park rather than go all the way up to the Bronx. Now they run the Brooklyn Cross Country Championship in Prospect Park, but all the other cross country races are held in Van Cortlandt Park.
So you said you had run a few marathons. When was that later in your running career, if you will?
Yonkers was my first marathon. That's where Buddy Eden qualified for the Olympics. That was over 90 degrees too.
Yeah, did he win by like 15 minutes or something?
Yeah, because it was so hot. He trained in a sweatsuit, so he got acclimated to the heat, running in a sweatsuit. I remember Mackenzie, I think, came in second. Gordon Mackenzie had a pretty wife who ran also.
Correct.
And McConnell came in third or fourth or whatever. McConnell ran the Olympic marathon, I think, in '68. I think he came in 22nd in '68. And Peter McConnell. He's getting to be an old guy then.
Do you have any memories of Ted Corbett?
No. One thing that I like to mention, I run around Fort Hamilton, being a retired soldier. And a few years ago, I ran around and I saw an old guy looking like him running with a nurse. Do you know anything? So I said, "Hi, how you doing?" And the nurse said, "Why don't you leave us alone?" I guess I looked bumbershow. I don't know. So I said, if you want, I'll jog with you. And the nurse said, no, he's going to fall. So was that Ted Corbett? You know?
I would guess not. It sounds like something he would do, but I don't know that he was out like that.
Running with him, it was an elderly guy. I don't remember. I think Oscar Moore a few times. He won a few races in the Bronx. I don't remember Ted Corbett at all running.
How about
I never paid that much attention. I just go to the starting line and run, you know. Maybe I wasn't too sociable.
Did you have any memories of the New York Pioneer Club, especially in McCombs Dam Park? Any of their runners?
Yeah.
Ted Corbett would have been one of them, but he was probably on the older end at the time that you were in there. But I was just curious if there was any competitors that you had that suited up for the Pioneer Club.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of their names. Unfortunately, a few of them passed away last year. Oh, John Garland.
Mm-hmm.
You know John Garland?
Absolutely, yep.
I bet him only once or twice. He always used to beat me, so I used to rig him about it all the time. He always beat me. So I always was within 100 yards of the finish line with John Garland. I bet him only once or twice. He bet me all the time. I don't remember. I remember there were a bunch of guys, but that's all I remember is John Garland. They're running for the New York Pioneer Club. Byron Dice ran for the AA track club, where Jim Borden was the coach, I remember. But they did mostly track. Byron Dice ran for AA track club.
Mm-hmm.
I remember. It's been a long time ago, huh?
You remember a lot. I'm very impressed.
Well, I was there and ran my guts out, so I didn't pay that much attention. We just ran our guts out, and that was it. And what happened happened.
And did you do that in marathons too? Were you out there, did you feel like you were pushing it the whole time?
Yeah. I was only a 4-hour marathon runner because I ran my first 10 miles like 6 minutes a mile because it felt so easy. And then I pooped out after 15 miles. I always started to walk because I pooped out. Then I ran and walked after 15 miles. I didn't eat nothing, probably that why. I didn't know about carbohydrate loading or you could eat something as you're running. I just ran till I dropped, and I still try to do that. But I try to drink more now, I guess.
And you had mentioned running some international marathons. What prompted those trips?
No. I was in the Army.
Oh, you were in the Army. I see. I thought you would run those marathons. Okay.
Yeah, I was in the Army in Germany. So I ran the Frankfurt Marathon.
Okay, so you did. Yeah.
And in Japan, I ran the Hiroshima Marathon because I was in Japan. So anybody can enter those races and run. So since I was in Japan, I entered the Hiroshima Marathon. I never competed for the Army or the Air Force. I never had a second off. Anyhow, I just ran, did my job, and then any spare time I would run. And when any local races, I would run. But the military, if you don't know the general or the colonel, you don't get no time off. You got to do your job. So a sideline is in Baumholder, Germany. I met Ray Mercer. You know who Ray Mercer was?
No, I don't.
In 1960 and 1980, he won the Olympic gold medal in boxing, heavyweight boxing. He was a big, strong guy. And I used to see him working out in the gym. He was like 400 pounds. If you YouTube him, you could see he knocked people out of the ring. So I used to tell him, let's go running. You could lose some of your weight. So he said, who's going to make me run? So I said, not me. But he was like the third best professional boxer when he got out of the Army. But he weighed 300 plus pounds. So it's unfortunate I couldn't get him, or he didn't get run to lose weight. He'd be a better boxer. So that's another celebrity I met when I was in the Army. I also worked out a little with Ron Zinn. He held the world record. Ron Laird. He held the world record for the mile in race walking. I got to know him a little bit. He lives in Ohio now. He's on Facebook once in a while.
Did you ever think about doing any coaching yourself? Like, I realize maybe a professional boxer would be a challenge to get running, but is that something that you were ever interested in?
I meet a lot of people in Forest Park, high school, college, old people. And what I tell them is, whatever you want to do the mile in, aim to do 10 quarters, 20 quarters at that time, and you do the time. And all you got to do is that. And just like Roger Bannister did, there's no big secret. You need someone give you a little motivation, and that's all there is to coaching, in my opinion. I don't like coaches, go faster, or whatever. I was very lucky. I had a great high school coach that helped coach Wisniewski and Byron Dice and a lot of other people too. And his theory was 10, 12 quarters. It's faster than what you want to do, or 220s. You do a half. And, he helped Byron and George, run faster. He was a German guy. His name was Henry Jung. He was very, very nice, smart guy. He made starting blocks and whatever. Coached at East New York High School. And to time, looking back, time goes so fast. So, that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard. You could ask 20 guys around the same race, and they all, I guess, have a different interpretation or whatever.
Sure, yeah, especially when these memories fade with time. So they probably all won the same race if you ask them today.
Yeah. The bad thing about running is rich old guys have nothing else to do, make the stupid rules, almost like in tennis, with the stupid infractions, because these old rich guys, what do they got to do? You drank too much coffee, you're banned. Your heel is 1/8 of an inch too high, you're banned. To me, that's just kind of stupid, and they get so much money for doing nothing. And it's a shame there's no money in track and field, except for a handful of people. It's a shame that way. Stupid golf, pickleball, and other sports, you make millions of dollars in a game. And in track and field, there's amateurism is just stupid. What do you think about amateurism?
I think it's come a long way from like the AAU days.
You still don't get no money.
Yeah.
Relative to other sports.
Absolutely, yeah. And they don't, you can't discuss your contracts, whether it be with the sponsor or anything like that. Yeah.
Anybody can enter a race and run a race. And I guess, fortunately, told me he got 100,000 when he won the Chicago Marathon, 100,000. He broke the world record and a Mercedes, so that's not too shabby. But only a handful of people could run 2:05 for the marathon. So the marathon pays 100,000, but that's chicken change in tennis or golf, right?
Absolutely.
One tournament in tennis, they make $1 million, and running is the hardest sport because you run till you drop, right? What's the hardest sport? There's nothing harder, in my opinion, than running, because you run till you drop. No other sport do you have to do that. So that's the way I look at it, but I enjoy doing it, so we do it. But that's the way it is. So you see, college athletes are finally starting to get some money that they pass through deserve. So it's about time that college athletes, I think, starting to get that money. Huh?
It'll be interesting to see how that, a lot of the college athletes anyways, the ones that I've heard about have been football players, basketball players, the big time college sports. It'll be interesting to see how that trickles down to track and field.
And it doesn't, it does.
Yeah, I'm
And
hoping over
it's
time
only
we get some
football,
trickle, but
basketball.
yeah.
It's only football, basketball, that make the big bucks. It don't trickle down. It just, that's the way it is.
Yeah,
But
I know that
and another-
some college track and field and university track and field programs are being slashed or cut because of this too. I mean, I'm being very
You don't
optimistic
need
with my
money.
trickle down theory.
you don't need no money to run. Running is free.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need money for? You don't need no money to run, right? Running is free, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you need money for?
Well, now you need
Hey,
money for the
$1
$200
million?
super shoes and
You don't need no super shoes.
I agree,
don't
but
need
that's
that. Regular shoes is good enough. You don't need that. One interesting thing, I was shocked to see Lee Kawach, had 10 pair of spikes when he was running his quarters. I said, why are you wearing spikes? You're just working out. He said, Jerry, the idea is to run as fast as you can. And Adidas gave me unlimited shoes, so why not take them and use them? I get custom-made shoes from Adidas. So I said, that's very nice, but I never looked at it that way. You should wear the best shoe when you work out, because the idea is to run fast as you can, right?
mm-hmm.
And wear the best shoe, you're going to run as fast as you can. So I always wear heavy, bulky shoes. Maybe that's why I wasn't a good runner. Because I never wore light, fast shoes or whatever. The main thing is having a great time, pushing your guts out. And what happens, is my view. But like I said, in coaching, all you got to tell the person is a few sentences. Every other day, run quarters 220 and gradually increase. And that's all there is. So what do you need a coach for? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you can get the schedule down yourself and know how to push yourself, which it sounds like you do. It sounds like you need to be a prime candidate to be self-coached. Yep.
Yeah, but it's very nice to have a few guys that are your caliber, and you're training with a few guys is a lot. It's very hard to do it by yourself. So if you get a few guys, you could push each other, and that's the only advice I could think of in running. They got so many drugs now and whatever, and yet they still don't run faster than they ran 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see how long some of these records have stood, and then how some are, some have been untouched because they were drugs, but that hadn't been proven, back in the 80s, and then some, like the mile world record that.
No, in 1998, that was 1998. And those two guys were devout Muslims. They would never drink alcohol or take drugs. That both of them were devout Muslims. And they were both from Morocco. And obviously they never tested positive for anything. But even with drugs, that's a fantastic time.
Yeah, no, I mean, that stood for however many years now. Almost 30 years?
Since 1998.
Yeah.
And they did it somewhere in Europe, in Finland, or, so the time was legit when you do it in European country, the way I look at it. And Clutch, I ran Chicago, London, Berlin. He won all those races in 2:05. So that's as legit as you could get, I guess. And I guess some people have a strong heart and push harder than other people.
Would you say that?
I'm reading.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm reading Roger Bannister's book now, Reminiscing. You should read it. You get very motivated. They lived very hard lives. They had no time for nothing. They had to squeeze half an hour in here, half an hour in there, and yet they broke the 4-minute mile doing 10 quarters under 60. So that's all you need to know, right? You don't need nothing fancy. You don't need nothing fancy. You don't need no fancy nothing. But look at the shoes they wore. You know, their shoes were so heavy, and they ran on a cold track, a fresh cold track, and it was damp and wet and whatever. So imagine that's like a 5 second difference in the mile running on an all-weather bouncy track versus a cold track.
Sure, yeah.
So running's a beautiful sport, the way I look at it. You know, like George Sheen wrote in his book, you know, that the philosophy of running or whatever. I guess some people like to sit on the couch and some people like to run all day, and everyone in between.
And is that what motivates you at 80 years old, 80 plus, to still work out?
Yeah, I think because I have adult hyperactivity deficit disorder, it's difficult to sit still. So I think that way I run a lot. Everybody's looking for a reason why. So I don't know, but I just enjoy running twice a day because it's relaxing or whatever. Some people, you know, like doing it, and most people, unfortunately, don't. If you read the latest studies, runners live approximately 8 years longer than non-runners. And Roger Bannister died when he was 88, and he ran his guts out. So, you know, because obviously when you run hard, you get a very slow resting heart rate. Mine's 45 for resting heart rate because I run an hour or two a day.
Wow, that's awesome.
So your heart got to work less during most of the day, except when you run an hour or two. But, you know, doctors years ago said running was bad for your health, bad for your knees, bad for your heart. And now you could see every exercise 90 minutes a week. So the medical field still is wishy-washy in a lot of stuff. I don't know why, but you know, that's the way it is. Like, this food is healthy, this food's not. I think the medical profession does an injustice in what they say. Every week, coffee's good for you. 1 week, it's bad the next week, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can anywhere you look, you can find the information that you want. Just you know, different sides of the same coin.
Not necessarily it's right or wrong. They need to do a better job conveying to the public, you know, exercise is good for you and sun's good for you. And you know what facts are facts. But, you know, that's the way it is. Everybody got to choose, you know, make their own decision every day, what they're going to do.
Along those lines, like in the 60s, you know, doctors were saying women shouldn't run, their uterus is going to fall out. Did you had mentioned Gordon McKenzie's wife, Chris, earlier. Do you remember any other female runners that you saw in New York or elsewhere when you were running?
I remember when I ran the Boston Marathon, whatever year that was, a lot of runners said they should beat the hell out of that girl runner, Schwitzner, whatever her name was. So I was really surprised that a lot of runners wanted to beat the hell out of her because they said ladies can't run a marathon, she's going to get hurt. That really surprised me. You know, I figured anyone wants to run could run. I forgot what year she ran, but I ran the Boston Marathon when she ran, and that was the consensus of a lot of runners at that time.
Yeah, her first Boston was 67.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It was very difficult for a lady to run because so many male athletes didn't like that. Maybe they were embarrassed getting beat. You know, getting beat by a lady, huh?
Yeah, it could be.
That was the reason.
Yeah, she ended up, not her first Boston, but she ended up running sub-3. You know, she became quite a prolific and fast marathoner, and then did so much for the community, you know, women's marathoning in particular. But yeah, whenever I hear her tell this story, you know, on podcasts or whatnot, she's always saying how supportive the people, men, obviously, when she jumped into the race, how supportive the men were, but I guess there must have been some grumblings too.
Yeah. My coach said she should be put in jail. You have both sides, but fortunately, the runners around her protected her from that super guy trying to stop her from running. So she was very lucky to have supportive runners by her when that guy tried to tackle her.
Yeah, Jock Semple, the race
remember.
director. Yep.
See that what I mean by stupid laws, brought down by old rich white men, retired senators and generals. They still make the laws in track and field and in tennis and other sports. And most of them don't know the first thing what the heck they're talking about. As a matter of fact, in 1968, I met them. I had at AAU, he was driving a Rolls Royce or a chauffeur, and I was walking down the highway, and he said, "Where's Olympic Stadium? Get in and I'll show you." And all they were talking about how much money, how many thousands they're going to exchange when I was in their Rolls Royce. But I don't know why runners, swimmers, weightlifters are so sheepish and not have some of the athletes, govern their own sport rather than have these wealthy old men set the rules and take whatever few millions they could scrap together. I don't know. I guess Prefontaine sort of, you see what happened to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
He got killed. So, that sort of silenced the money. But that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Hopefully most people are middle class and they have a few hours a day, to work out and whatever. Not like years ago, you had to work a long time just to make a decent living. But that's hard to convey to kids nowadays, right? You had chores them days. You just didn't sit around and do nothing because you had a lot of chores to do and things to do. Now kids just sit around, play their stupid games and do nothing. So you need somebody like Dr. Oz type person to get, well, like when Kennedy was president, to get their kids to work out again for their own health. It's just a shame that 60-70% of Americans are overweight now and out of shape because they take their car around the corner for something or whatever. It's just a shame no great athlete, spoke up and said, let's let everyone start work out again. But that's the way it is, unfortunately. When I was in Germany, the whole family goes on hikes when they have time. Hiking is very popular in Europe. And when I get older, I'm going to get into hiking too. That seems like a nice sport. Hiking seems to be, and if you read Bannister's book, he went on a lot of hikes too. Climb up mountains and hills, makes you tough.
Mm-hmm.
But that last quarter mile, everybody wants to stop. But hiking miles up steep hills makes you tough. So, that what I'm going to try to start doing, getting into more hikes. You have any other questions?
I can ask one more, which is, you've mentioned all kinds of athletes who are, world renowned and still, the world record holder in the 1500 and the mile, but which one, if you had to identify one athlete that had the most influence on your running, who would that be?
I'd be my high school track coach. Without him, I would have never started running. And he coached Conley, the St. John's half miler. I think in this country, a lot of high school track coaches aren't given credit for the time and effort that they put in, coaching kids late at night or coaching kids in all weather. There's a lot of great American track coaches, I think that they should be given, but they're never in the paper and never credit. So there's a guy named Coach Roy. Coach Roy?
No.
He coached. He still coaches. He coached Cardoza, and now he coaches Bishop Malloy. He coached Muhammad. You know who she is?
Oh,
She
Dalila
won the
Mohammed, yeah.
2016. She won the 2016 400-meter hurdles.
Yep.
And she came in third in the 2020, and she's going to go for the 2028. So he coached her in Forest Park, for example. So he's a great guy. He's a great coach. He coached a lot of sprinters. So that's what I mean. There's a lot of great coaches that never given no credit, no money, take out of pocket for whatever. So, that's the way it is.
Especially in high school when track often gets kids who aren't either cut out to play other sports or are forced into doing a sport and they choose track. And a lot of high school track coaches are able to whip those kids into shape, as it were.
Yeah,
I agree.
you're
I think
right.
that does go very under-recognized.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Most of them are very under-recognized, and just a shame. That's the way it is.
Well, hopefully, it's getting, like you said, this NIL thing will be interesting with college and seeing how that, if and how that affects track and field. But there's just, like you said, there's just not enough money in the sport to get kids in particular interested, I think. And like what Michael Johnson's doing with the Grand Slam track has been interesting. But, that's on its first year. So we'll see how that proceeds. But I'm hopeful that, like you said, some of the old rich guys will kind of end up phasing out of the, governance of track. And hopefully if we get some young blood in there, we can change the sport a little bit.
Yeah, just to mention, in 2026, Trump Jr. and a billionaire are sponsoring the drug Olympics in the United States. So you can take any drug.
Oh, the
And
enhanced game, yeah.
if you break a world record, you get $1 million on the spot. So two Greek swimmers broke world record while they're on all these super drugs, and they got $1 million each. So we'll see what happens with that. In 2026, they're going to have the World Championship Olympics where you take any drug, anything you want. So you should read up on that and see how many athletes might want to go that route to get some money.
Yeah, we'll see how that, if I had seen about the swimmers. I don't think they've signed anyone for track yet, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see who comes out of the woodwork to try to do that. So times are changing, that's for sure.
$10 for a few days for a poor athlete is unbelievable.
Yeah, especially when you're doing it with artificial enhancement. It's not even, you're not relying on your own ability.
Well, it helps a few percent. You still got to go 90-some% yourself and a few percent.
Sure, yeah.
With caffeine and other.
Yep.
But you don't know whether your competitors are taking it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know your competitors aren't taking it? So if everybody could take any drug they want, then it's equal. Because you could take any drug you want, they'd be equal. If some take it and some don't take it, it's not equal.
Right.
So that's the way it is.
Maybe these enhanced games are onto something. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. I used to do drug testing in the Army. It's no big deal. They could take your hair. Drugs stay in your hair forever. So if they have a doubt, they could take the guy's hair and test for drugs. But the way that they portray drug testing is not the way it's really done. In less than 4 hours, you take a blood urine test. In less than 4 hours, a good lab tech could tell you any drug that the person has. So it doesn't take a week. I don't know what they say a week. It takes 4 hours the time you get the sample till you're running on an instrument to get the results. And now it's probably quicker than 4 hours. But the way they portray it is very poor. I guess they want to cover things up. Cover up my guy and look at your guy.
Right, and then do the B sample and yeah.
But that's the way it is. That's unfortunately the way it is.
Yeah, the system is broken for sure. But again, hopefully we can find some good eggs who can help straighten it out.
Well, it's up to the runners, the weightlifters, swimmers, to finally voice what they deserve. It's a shame that none of them, or maybe they do and get killed, or whatever, or they get a warning, or whatever. But hopefully things will get improve in the future.
I hope so,
Hopefully
and you'll be
things-
there too, because you're still going to be running and hiking, and so you'll be you'll be at the
Yeah,
forefront.
Yeah, hopefully. But running is very simple. You just go all out. Or if you're a sprinter, you do heavy weights, and that's all you need to know. In my opinion, these big fat books, with your lactic acid, your VO, that's nice to know, but it's not required. Look at the great runners come out of the jungles of Africa. Baby Vakila ran in the goddamn jungles with bare feet. He goes to Rome and beats everybody by 2 minutes running in the jungle. So what does he know about drugs or training? All you do is run. And all these great African runners, when they're little kids, they run to school, run to the village, and then an Italian coach sees them, signs them up, and that's how they get to the Olympics. I'm sure there's a lot of great runners in Africa, but they don't have the means, to get to the races. How the hell are you going to go from Africa? You can't even speak English or whatever they speak, to these races. So it's sort of fun. They're sort of funneled, to allow a few of them to come. If you allow most of them to come, they'd be the top 50. So that would be ridiculous. But the best should always try to compete. The idea is, in my opinion, to see who's the fastest in the world, not just, in the civilized so-called countries. But other people, do what they could do, to make it better. I guess I don't have nothing else unless you have any more questions.
No, this has been great. Thanks, Jerry. It's great to hear some of your memories from running in the 60s, 70s, and now. So I appreciate you taking some time today.
I saw in September some people are going to get together in New York City. Maybe I'll see that on Facebook again, and I'll try to meet you guys in Manhattan, wherever you're going to get together, maybe in September.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jerry. Take care.
Okay. Hey, bye.